The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
As our work group explored the possibilities for topics for the discussion for tonight, our discussions led to a reflection on the times we live in. Our lives, our culture is fast-paced. We are asked to do more with less. We struggle to find time for the demands of our jobs, our families, and even for ourselves. And without guiding principles, without clearly considered and practiced values, we risk losing focus and ending in a place that is not desirable either for ourselves or the communities that we are in. Our speakers tonight offer guidance for returning to basic, even altruistic principles that will nurture our organizations, our communities, and ourselves.
First of all, I'm just going to ask a poll because my interest is in ethics. How many of you think that we really need more ethics in our society today? Just a poll. I just like that. Okay. Now, how many of you are sitting next to an ethical person? Okay, so it's outside the room that we have the problems, and not inside the room. It's always good to know who your audience is. So, okay, now we're going to be talking about how we build community for other people, right? Ethics is an interesting topic, and it's an interesting topic partly because we have so many different understandings of the word. And in very traditional societies, the term ethics is usually tied to actual practices, customs or habits that we have, and that we develop as we experience growth in the community. So ethics is all about how we develop, how we grow as members of a community, and then what the expectations of us are as participants in that community as we mature. So what we want to start with tonight is this question about community. What's our understanding of community? What's our understanding of words like common, the common good, common sense? Do you know common sense comes from the notion that common sense is the sense we make of things when we deliberate in common. The sense that comes out of a room of people talking together to get the best ideas. Common sense. Right? Words have an interesting history.
What happened to the energy level? What will happen to the expressions on people's faces? Animated, engaged, interesting. See, what you started talking about was the good stuff. Whatever you begin a conversation with, you'll get more of. Okay, tell me all the problems facing the Rochester area right now. Well, what have we gotten? All the problems facing the Rochester area. What would have changed? Nothing. We shape our organizations, we shape our relationships, we shape our communities by the conversations that we have. What's really interesting is that I asked you to be silent with one another. Silent has the same letters as the word listen. Peter Drucker, the guru of leadership writing, says this: if I was going to have a leadership academy, it would have 3 words: listen, listen, listen. It begins in those kind of conversations. And what did you listen to? The good stuff that's taking place in people's lives and in this community and in this room. The good stuff. I'm diabetic. In order to stay semi-healthy, I have a gallon of apple cider in my refrigerator at all times. 9 o'clock at night, I want a little snack. I go and look at my refrigerator. There's that apple cider that's been sitting there, and there are those grapes that have been fermenting in a bottle on the counter. Okay, tonight I'll choose apple cider. Take the apple cider out, but before I uncap it and pour myself a glass, what do you do with that apple cider? Shake it. And why do you shake it? Because the good stuff is on the bottom. So every once in a while to get the good stuff, you got to get all shook up. Get up and talk to somebody that I don't know about community when I just came to listen to a lecture. You got all shook up. Got some of the good stuff. And every once in a while that happens in our life, that we have to have that kind of experience, because that's what leadership is in a community. A community is not just being with the people that we know and love each and every day. It's being gathered in the company of strangers. But how important it is to be in the company of strangers and to also have good friends. Viterbo University would send me out to do a presentation called the Tom and Earl Show. I would go with Earl Maderi, a friend of mine, who in 1984, when he came to the university, I had him for class his first semester. I knew so little that for the next 30 years, I tried to give him some of his tuition money back. Earl was a marvelous student. He could have went on to be an operatic performer at the University of Michigan, but instead chose to go and work in a church for $5,000 a year. You can imagine that phone call home. But he went and worked in the church, and he came back, and he worked at Viterbo, went on to get his doctorate. So my friend became a co-worker, became my supervisor. Wonderful, wonderful voice. And I would go with him, and I would just tell a few stories. And 3 years ago, they sent us out to do this, and I was by myself. Because Earl, at 40, was fighting stage 4 liver cancer. And all of you know what it's like when you have to go to work and you have to go give a presentation or whatever you have to do and you don't have the support of your friend. And so it was the Tom and Earl show, and I did my best because it was only me. Now it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm at the Paper Valley Inn in Appleton, Wisconsin. I haven't had anything to eat. I have to give a workshop the whole next day. I don't know where I'm going to stay. And as I'm walking through the lobby of the Paper Valley Inn, I bump into a gentleman. Mark! Tom! It's my brother Mark. He's a district attorney of Adams County in Wisconsin. I hope that none of you have ever met him. And I said, what are you doing here? He said, I'm here for the state DA convention. He said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm giving a talk for Viterbo. I said, what are you doing now? He says, I was going to go to Subway and get a sandwich. I said, hey, listen, we're old enough. Let's go to the tavern. So we went in and we ordered supper together. Had a beverage. He said, where are you staying tonight? I said, I don't have a place to stay. He said, why don't you come up and stay with me? The state's already paid for a room. I got a king-size bed if you don't mind sleeping with me. I said, not at all. I went and I got my stuff, came back up to his room. We were talking for a while. Now it's time for bed. We both got up, took our medication. We got in bed with each other, turned out the lights, and instantly we're 12 and 11 again. The last time we had slept in the same bed is when we were 12 and 11. We started giggling and laughing and snorting. And then we started talking about our grandmother Florence, who was an amazing influence in both of our lives. We talked about our mom and our dad. Dad's been gone for 10 years now and Mom 4. We talked about our aunts and our uncles, our cousins. We talked about our brothers and our sisters. We talked about our wives and our children and the good friends that we've had and the good work that we've been given to do. And in the dark of the night, we're reminded of the good stuff, that we've been loved for a lifetime. See, why is it so important in terms of the good stuff? John and I just met earlier in a conversation, so we don't even know each other that well. But if I start hacking, coughing, and sneezing, how long do you expect John to sit here? Not very long at all. You wouldn't want him to get sick. But what if I'm bitter, cynical, angry, sarcastic on a regular basis? Doesn't that also affect John? Each of us in this room carries a virus. And I would ask you, how are you infecting others? That's what leadership is. Did I raise people up or did I tear them down? Did I work for the common good or was I self-serving today? That's a nature in terms of virtue. In a new book called Connected, done by 2 sociologists, one from Harvard and one from San Diego State, what they did is they took the Framingham heart surgery, the heart study, and what they did is they looked at the surveys that they had received over 25 years, took the data, put it on a computer program, and because they were measuring in terms of people's relationships with family and friends within the community and neighbors, they were able to take all this data about the emotional lives of the people they were studying. And know what they found out? Emotions act like a virus within a community. And that John is not only affected by my relationship with me, John is affected by my relationship with Rick. And all of a sudden you begin to recognize in terms of the influence that we have on people's lives each and every day. Noel, as you took care of patients today, you not had only an effect on the patient. You had an effect on all the people that serve with you and that patient's family. And you begin to recognize in terms of the sacred trust that we hold in each other in order to serve each other each and every day. And it begins with remembering the good stuff. The good stuff. Second thing that I'd like to say about leadership and the common good is this. You got to show up. I went to St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. Some of you who went to St. Thomas already don't like me. Isn't that kind of amazing? We were taught to go to these private institutions where we became very narrow-minded. Well, what happens? I played football at St. John's. Don't be too surprised. My chest has moved to my waist. I wasn't what you call a great college football player. My nickname was Sharman. I didn't play very much, and I knew I wasn't going to play very much. After the first week, I figured out everybody was bigger, faster, and stronger than I was. So I called home, and I said to my dad, listen, I don't think I'm going to play very much. And he said, I can understand that. But I would ask you this, if you are going to stay on the team, I ask you each and every day to go to practice and to give it 100%. Give everything you have each and every day. Show up and do whatever you can to help the team to become successful. Probably one of the greatest lessons of my life. Wherever you are, on any committee, on any board, in any organization, show up each and every day and do whatever you can to help other people become successful. So I went to practice for 4 years. I did play twice. Once in my sophomore year and once in my senior year. My junior year, I thought I was about ready to get in. My friends came to the game and they started cheering, yelling down to Glardy, we want Thibodeau, we want Thibodeau, we want Thibodeau. Glardy said, hey, Thibodeau. I said, yeah, coach. He said, go see what they want. That was the kind of career that I had. But I showed up. They needed somebody to play defensive tackle. I did that. They needed somebody to catch a punt. I did that. They needed somebody to pick up cups on the field. I did that. I did whatever I could to contribute. That was my career. In 2003, John Glardy, from the state of Minnesota, Collegeville, became the winningest football coach in college football history. And Sports Illustrated sent a reporter to Collegeville to do a story on Glardy. And I don't know why they did this in 2003, but they have a picture from when I was on a team. There I am. I don't have a nick on my helmet. I don't have a grass stains. I never got in a game, but I'm in Sports Illustrated. And all I did was show up. And what I'm here to say is this: we never know what happens when we show up. We never know the good stuff that's going to be uncovered. Like Lynn earlier in the conversation that we had, there he has teed up for veterans. The good work that that man is doing with young soldiers coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. And every time he just shows up, miracles take place. And you think about it for just a moment, how many people aren't showing up in our communities? How many fathers aren't showing up to love their children or take care of their wives? How many children are not showing up when their elderly parents need help? How many friends and neighbors don't show up? How many people come into our organizations, to our workplaces, and for a number of different reasons have forgotten about the good stuff and are just kind of there? Anna Quinlan, in a marvelous little essay called A Short and Happy Life, she writes this: here's my resume. It's not what my professional bio says, proud as I am of all that. I am a good mother to 3 good children. I have tried never to let my profession stand in the way of being a good parent. I no longer consider myself the center of the universe. I show up. I listen. I try to laugh. I am a good friend to my husband. I've tried to make my marriage vows mean what they say. I show up. I listen. I try to laugh. I'm a good friend to my friends, and they to me. Without them, I would have nothing of interest to say to anyone, because I'd be a cardboard cutout. But I call them on the phone. I meet them for lunch. I show up. I listen. I try to laugh. I'd be rotten or at best mediocre at my job if those other things were not true. You cannot be really first-rate at your work if work is all you are. So I suppose the best piece of advice I could give anyone is pretty simple. Get a life. A real life, not a manic pursuit of the next promotion, the bigger paycheck, the larger house. Do you think you'd care so very much about those things if you developed an aneurysm one afternoon or found a lump in your breast while in the shower? Get a life in which you notice the smell of the salt water pushing itself on a breeze over the dunes. A life in which you stop and watch how a red-tailed hawk circles over a pond in a stand of pines. Get a life in which you pay attention to the baby as she scowls with concentration when she tries to pick up a Cheerio with her thumb and her first finger. Turn off your cell phone, turn off your regular phone for that matter. Keep still. Be present. Get a life in which you're not alone. Find people you love and who love you. And remember that love is not leisure, it is work. Each time I look at my diploma, I remember that I'm still a student, still learning every day how to be human. Send an email, write a letter, kiss your mom, hug your dad. Get a life in which you are generous. Look around at the azaleas making fuchsia starbursts in spring. Look at a full moon hanging silver in a black sky on a cold night. And realize that life is glorious and you have no business taking it for granted. Care so deeply about its goodness that you want to spread it around. Take the money you would have spent on beers in a bar and give it to charity. Work in a soup kitchen. Tutor a 7th grader. All of us want to do well, but if we do not do good too, then doing well will never be enough. Get a life. Take time to remember the good stuff and show up every day. It's the beginning part of leadership and building up the common good.
How do we create community? How do we develop the kind of community that's really going to build up individuals, that's going to help them create a life that flourishes? We're here to reflect on that some today, with Tom talking about the good stuff, showing up, getting a life. How do we make that happen? We talk a lot in our society about our values. Can we create good values in a community? I'm a philosopher by training. I like to pay attention to words. One of the interesting things about the word value is it comes from the economic realm. How much value does your car have? How much would somebody pay for it? What's it worth in exchange? It's an odd term to use when we're talking about ethics, because when you meet good people who are committed to doing something really good, they're not assigning a certain amount of worth to it, and this is right. This is the good thing to do. This is what we should do. And the traditional term for this is virtue. It's virtue. And I think it's really important that we use words appropriately. Sometimes we do value things. There's all kinds of behaviors we value, that we put a certain worth, we want to set a high priority to it. But there's a lot of behaviors that are not like that. They aren't a matter of how much it's worth. How much is it worth to you to be honest? Do you value honesty more than embarrassment or less? Right? That's an odd thing to say, isn't it? Is a person who thinks about, well, should I really be honest here or not? Is that an honest person? Is the honest person just a person who tells the truth reflexively? Has a virtue of honesty. So we reflect on these things. What do we pay attention to and what do we try to develop? Well, one of the things that I've been reflecting on for a number of years now is what people say when they do good things. What do people say when they do something courageous? We had a person just the other day near La Crosse rescued somebody from a burning car. Came driving down the road. There was a car accident. The car was on fire. It had run into a semi just south of La Crosse. Jumped out, ran to the woman, pulled her free. Right? You don't know when the car is going to explode. They ask him afterwards, what does he say? What do you think he said?
Did what anybody would do.
Did what anybody would do. Not heroic. Would anybody do it? Would everybody do it? No. But the person who does that always says, I just did what everybody would do. Did they think about it first? Did they think about how courageous they were? No, the courageous person doesn't think about being courageous. The honest person doesn't think about being honest. The generous person doesn't really think about being generous. I'm just doing what I should. I wish I could do more. Right? It's really interesting. One of the things I've noticed is the way in which virtues affect the quality of people's relationships. So that the virtues become a matter of how people perceive one another. It's not even a matter of what they should do. It's literally a matter of how they see other people, how they perceive the world. A number of times I've encountered somebody doing some kind of minor act of generosity, helping somebody change a flat tire, or say coming out of a store at Christmas time and dropping $1 into the Salvation Army can, and you ask, well, why'd you do that? And they'll say something, oh, what goes around comes around. Ever heard anybody say it? What goes around comes around. What does that mean? Well, do you think that, you give $1 away today, tomorrow somebody's going to give you $1? No, it's not going to happen. So if you change somebody's flat tire, somebody will change you? No, it's not that. Well, I've been helped so much. I've had flat tires before, and I've been helped. I'm just happy to be able to help somebody else, right? What you find in generous people, in generous, good-hearted people, is kind of an automatically perceiving other people as opportunities. Meet a stranger. What's this relationship going to be? What's the opportunity here? What can I do? How can I help? It becomes a matter of perception. That's what these encounters are for. And greedy, self-serving people tend to see encounters with strangers as threats. What are they going to ask me for this time? If I say yes to this, what am I committing myself to now? About the qualities of relationships. This very idea of what goes around comes around, it's not a belief that things work out magically. It's just a perception. That's the way relationships are. Relationships over time, you do good things, your life is better. Now, what's so interesting about this is the lesson from the ancient Greeks, from Aristotle, that the virtues are what give us a kind of perception of others that make a good life possible. And there's something interesting that happens in the interchange between individuals and communities. Individuals who are virtuous make community life really interesting and fulfilling, so that the best kind of life is a public life. But it's the community that raises the individual, because virtues don't spring out of anywhere, and they do not spring from our conscious choices. They influence our conscious choices, but they come from our habits. They come from what we do. So if I'm not as generous as I should be, I'd like to be more generous, I should give more. I shouldn't think about generosity. I should just start acting differently. If I want to be more reverent, I don't have to reflect on anything. I just have to start praying more. Right? If I want to be more tolerant, I just have to start treating people better. Whether I believe in it or not, the habits eventually become character. And this is what the virtues are. A matter of our relationships. I'll give you a great illustration of this. We had, a couple months ago, at Viterbo University, we had a speaker named Martin Weiss. He was a Holocaust survivor. He raised in a large family in Hungary. Over the past 4 years at Viterbo, we've developed a relationship with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum to bring in a Holocaust survivor each year, and then on the following day hold a workshop for teachers on how to teach the Holocaust, how to integrate it in classrooms, because we found it's the best way to really engage kids in subjects like appreciation of others, and how you address topics like bullying, how you would talk about world concerns, world politics and so forth. It really engages kids, especially at middle school level. Now, here's the other thing about having these Holocaust survivors that I've observed over the years. So many people think, oh, we're going to hear a very depressing tale. What you end up hearing is something that's very difficult to hear and very uplifting. Because you listen to somebody who's overcome these tremendous odds and come through it. And it makes you think what the human spirit is capable of, right? Because you see it right there. So Martin Weiss, he tells a story. He's moved. We had a big crowd. We had 1,100 people there. And his biggest audience he'd spoken in front of. And most of the Holocaust survivors have only recently been telling their story as they've gotten much older. Now he tells this whole story, and he gets to the end where he's talking about liberation. And he and a few others, a half dozen or so, find themselves outside the city gates, liberated by the Americans. And they'd been in a concentration camp in Austria, and they're walking down the road. They don't know what they're going to do. They haven't had a meal in 2 weeks. They hope they can find some food, but they have no idea what's coming. They find an overturned truck, and they go and investigate, and they find in the truck are some hides from cattle, tanned hides, just big leather pieces. And they each grab one. It's all they can carry is one. So they each grab one hide because it's a possession. They've got something maybe it's worth something. They don't know, but they don't have any possessions anymore. They grab the hide, and then they find a bucket of lard. And they start eating. They haven't eaten for 2 weeks. They start eating some lard, but they can't just eat the lard plain. So one of the guys just grabs his bucket, and they carry it with them. And they walk a little farther down the road, and they come to a farmhouse. Austrian farmhouse. Somebody who lives fairly close to this camp. And they've been thinking, why doesn't somebody stop this? There's people outside. There's people that have to know what's going on. Why aren't they? And they've developed a hatred for the people who have to have known what's going on. But they also need food. So they go to the door, and they knock on the door, and a woman comes to the door. And they ask her if they can have a pot with some water and some flour and some eggs so they can use this lard and they can make dumplings. And she doesn't know what to do. So she gets these things for them, gives it to them. They go back outside, they build a little fire, they make dumplings, and they eat the first meal in 2 weeks. One of the men ate too many and died. Now here's what is the point of this story. He said afterwards, they talked about what they should do. And they each decided, in appreciation of this gift of this food, they would go and give this woman the hide that they had. So they went back to the door. They gave her each a hide. And he says, to this day, I don't know why we did it. We were so angry at her. We were enraged at all these people who had done this to us. And yet something made us think, we owed her this. This is something we had to do. This is a virtue. It's so much a part of his character, and each one of them were raised to show appreciation for what they are given, that they had to thank a person that they thought was their enemy. And he says, even to this day, I don't know why we did it. It doesn't make sense to me.